You're listening to Raconteurs News, it's 2018. A fucking set 2018 game for the 2018. Like a wanker. It's like radio people. What the BBC tell us isn't what we want us to believe. Then think it up and, think about who benefits. Because at the bottom of everything is somebody benefiting from something somewhere. And there's one thing for sure. It fucking ain't me. And it ain't you. Only something to get. 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 Now, what does then just find out then, innit? You get a frog, or a wolf, or a spider, or a snake. How can you get a snake to be the same species as a dog? It's easy. You call the species that bites you. Weird. That bites you. Yeah. That bites you. Okay. Yeah, you got a choice. 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 Well, you want a punch in the face or a kick in the bollocks? Yeah. So what did you want to talk about? Bollocks. Yes, Jason's bollocks. No bills of exchange. That's how much I'm interested in fucking cricket. Well, that's why the moniker of intelligence, would you see, Billy? Exactly. All the thinkers. Which one of us are you going to propose to this evening? A load of men who don't have sex.
Hello and welcome to Raconteurs News. It's Monday the 4th of March 2019. I seem to be running solo tonight because Jason seems to have other things on his mind. Might be football related, I'm not sure, because it's the Sheffield derby. I'm not too sure how much football gets played in those games. But let's not hang around. I've got a really good guest on tonight. I've been trying to, we've been in touch with him for quite a while, and it's just never happened that we could actually meet at the right time to talk and do this stuff. But it could be a controversial evening for a lot of people because they're very set in the ways in regards to certain, most factions of history, I suppose. But my guest has decided that he would look into, let's see what other perspectives are, and came to the conclusion by making and manufacturing a very, very excellent documentary. And that documentary is called Adolf Hitler, The Greatest Story Never Told. Now, like I said, it's going to prick people's ears up, and they're going to have a knee-jerk reaction, I've no doubt, to some of it. And no doubt we'll be told that if it wasn't for certain things, we'd be speaking German. But as I spoke to my guest off the air, that we need to be able to ask questions about everything. The moment that there's questions are being quelled and people are being stopped from answering them, and especially when things like law is passed to prevent you talking about it. Anybody who knows me raises a red flag to me that it's the truth doesn't need defending, it'll stand on its own. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Dennis Wise. Now, that isn't Dennis Wise, the Cockney footballer, which everybody seemed to think I was going to get on, Dennis. So, you know yourself better than I do, mate. Give us a bit of introduction and tell us how you started with this. Has it been a long-term thing, and how did it come to this? Because we can get to the controversy later.
Sure. Well, basically what happened was my father fought down in the Balkans on the side of the Germans, and the whole conception of World War II in Europe, mainland Europe, was totally different to what people outside Europe were being fed, because obviously, the Rothschilds, for instance, controlled the media. They had done in certain other wars, the Boer War, etc. So nobody back home knew the real story or why World War II was being fought. Instead, they were fed another narrative, which everybody tended to believe, because in them days, everybody believed the government.
Yeah.
So I came home from school one day, and obviously I knew a little bit about Hitler at the age of 10, something like that. And I said a question on why did Hitler kill 6 million Jews? Which after that, my dad went into more details. So over the years,
what would your dad say straight away off the bat when you said that?
What did
he say straight away?
Well, he had a shock on his face, and a hurtful look, and went on to say that Hitler was not that type of guy. Yeah. And this has been made up. So with that in mind, I went through life for a long period knowing all this, but not exactly confronting it, because where I am, you don't need any laws about Adolf Hitler.
Exactly.
It's just built in. So it come to a point where the internet came around, and for the first time I could see the possibility of an audience for this other story.
Yeah.
So I had a decision to make. Do I carry on as normal and live life out, come to live peacefully, or do I actually tell the story? And the reason I did tell the story in the end was the Blueberg massacre, which down in the Balkans, after the war had actually ended, people fighting the communists down there, the partisans, people fighting them gave up their arms and willingly surrendered and fought to get to the Austrian border, where they could surrender to the West, because they felt pointless surrender to the communists. So,
well, that was a rock and a hard place, wasn't it?
That was a rock and a hard place indeed. And it wasn't only the soldiers, they took the family as well, because they didn't want to leave them behind. So the grandfathers and the babies and the wives and the sisters and everybody else went with them. These were called camp followers. So they gave up their arms, surrendered. That's it. Our war's over now. And they were then promised safe passage to Italy. Now, they'd done the same with the Cossacks who'd been fighting on the side of the Germans not long before. Yeah. And they blatantly told them, you're going back to the Soviet Union. So they had to fight for 3 days. Cossacks put up a hell of a fight to get thrown onto these trains and then whisked back to certain death in the Soviet Union. Yeah. Well, rather than go through all that kind of carry on, what they decided to do was lie. And then a phone call to Churchill from the British guy in charge down there. What do we do with the camp followers? Do we send them back as well? And Churchill would have known, very down what would have happened. It's just mass genocide again. And he said, yeah, camp followers as well. So not only did he send around 200,000 actual troops back to die, but they sent the wives and the babies and the granddads and everybody else. And I just felt, if I don't tell this story, it's an insult to them people.
Yeah. Well, this is why I found that I've always had an open mind. I grew up with exactly the same undertakings from an education system, that I was happy knowing this much about World War I, much about World War II, what happened between those things. I was happy knowing that Adolf Hitler, with this megalomaniac who was mad on power, trying to take all over Europe, and he was going to take over England, but Churchill and his fight on the beaches and all that. Yeah. So I grew up with all that, and then obviously I always know that there's two sides to a story. I've never seen or heard the German side. I've seen stuff that's happened, the things like Dresden and things like that. I was going, whoa, that's harsh. That, I mean, yeah. When I have people saying, well, we only started bombing civilians because Hitler did, I went, well, there seems to be a bit of a discrepancy over this, because we seem to be bombing civilians for quite a few months before he actually went, you know what, I'm going to give you like for like. Can we have a question and a debate about this? No, you're wrong. We'd be speaking German. So I can't get past that fact that people won't talk about it. I understand the weight of it, because I said to you off air, I had 3 uncles, and my mum grew up through the Second World War. Yeah. She couldn't entertain that there was a possibility of another side to this. And, the fact that
emotion, you see.
That is what is laced through all of this. However, I want the truth, and I don't care how bad the truth is, because 6 million Jewish people being gassed homicidally is pretty bad. You don't get much worse than that.
Yeah, yet, and all that,
Yeah, we're just told that. When there's a question brought up, and it's not superlative proof or anything, but again, these are questions. Fred Leuchter raises not only forensical evidence, but he brings up childish questions, childlike questions that they can't answer. And to prove him wrong, they decide to do their own research, the Holocaust Museum.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, it's not 6 million, it's 4 million souls, not Jews, it's 4 million souls now. I think that's now, is that been now revised to 2.5?
Yeah, I think if anybody wants the legal transcript to all this, that would be the Ernst Zundel, the first trial in Canada. Ernst Zundel, which, you know, they weren't expecting. All these Jewish authors of books who lived off this Holocaust came in and gave evidence and got ripped apart and has to go back and change the books.
Yeah. And that is what's happened with the Memorial Museum and that plaque. The fact they changed the plaque once, never mind 2 or 3 times, they've admitted there's something not right. So why can't we ask questions? Why are the people in jail in Europe for raising questions? Because you'd be in jail now if we stayed in the EU.
Well, the thing is, right, what people might not know is in a Holocaust trial, you have got no innocent plea. You're either guilty by insane or just sheer guilty. And even the lawyers have got to walk a very, you know, tightrope because they got thrown in jail. So the judge's point of view is it's history, it happened.
You can't be wrong about it.
You can't, you're just an idiot. So what chance have we got in court?
Well, this is what my problem is, because all that over there in their courts, it's all civil law, which is all man-made legislation. That was like the first line I drew about leaving the EU. If we stayed in the EU, we lose common law. That is our only remedy. And people don't believe that the highest court in this land is common law. That's the very highest, because you are hurting a man. That cannot be done. Every act that is passed through Parliament must be beneficial to man and woman. It can't be sanctions. The regulations are the sanctions, and they're commercially used for aspects of that act. It's the act that you've got to concentrate on. The judges are writing law at the bench by using regulations that are applying commercial law to every man and woman. Because as you touched on off air about the birth certificates, we were all corporatized at that point. And that corporation, Mr., Miss, Mrs., are all saying, oh, Mr., that's me. No, it's not. But you've just recognized the jurisdiction that now has control over you. And that man-made jurisdiction is all they have in Europe. That's why they tried to get Ernst Zundel extradited, because they couldn't do it in Canada because they had that free speech. But how many, wasn't it the highest end of the Jewish barristry that was trying to get him extradited?
I mean, most of the governments are influenced by this picture of World War II, which I made 2 more documentaries. Well, I'm just in the closer stages of a 3rd documentary. The 2nd documentary explains why the EU is communist, amongst other things. It's more or less the who, how, and where from 1945 who got us to where we are today. And I go through all different types of things, and EU I cover as well. I mean, people used to think Margaret Thatcher was a right-wing extremist who went over into Europe and fought the battle, you know, to get better race, and she come back and people used to admire her guts and battling skills. She's an internationalist, or she was an internationalist. Yes. So she sold every asset Britain ever had.
Yes.
For pennies. So
you know. the beauty of it is, the way I understand it, is that it was only ever the operational management that was privatized and sold. So they are receiving revenue from running our services. So let's just take British Gas, which I think it was German. Last I heard. But British Gas, I've lost track of what I was going to say then.
Well, even North Sea Oil.
Lost track.
I mean, that's another big one. That was sold off.
Well, at the end of the day, when we're looking at all the corporations' sides to this, it was the privatization. So they privatized British Gas. Now that's the grid. They haven't sold the grid. The grid's still ours, but the operational management is set between different companies. The utility company is a billing agent. they act as commercial and non-commercial, and that's the difference between the bills. If you recognise which one you are as a creditor, you cannot pay in this society. So that takes revenue from these people. And British Gas are only revenue collectors, but they have to play the bills of exchange, and they give you the right remedies.
Yep.
That has been bastardized so much and changed to where everybody thinks of this corporate entity. You go back to the war and then take it from that education system. We've lost track of anything that was of value to us.
Yeah.
Not just historically, but, you know, as I said before, we've been taught through a Nazi education system, which when you look at the bigger picture, you can't just direct that as Nazis, because if you do say Nazi, they think Germany, Hitler, all his crew. They don't think New York City, Americans. They don't think that. They don't think Prescott Bush. They don't think John Rockefeller, who's saying, I don't want a nation of thinkers. I want a nation of workers. Let's do an education system. Well, look at the perfect education system that we have. It teaches us what to think and not how to think. Fortunately, school never got a grip on me. It was something that I couldn't wait to get away from.
There's something not right about it.
It was everything. Give me some information, yes, and I'll decide whether the information is good for me or not. But one funny story was in about 1980, 81, I'd be about 9, 10, something like that. And we did a history lesson. You would not get it in a history lesson now, but we did a history lesson. And in those days, you wrote the date in the top right-hand corner. Then you wrote the title of the what you were going to talk about. Then it was pens down. You and the teacher, the class and the teacher was now going to discuss before you wrote anything. So I wrote the date, and then I wrote Bills of Exchange Act 1882. I underlined it twice, Dennis, and then put my pen down, folded my arms, and sat back and said, I'm not going to use this. This is a waste of my time.
Yeah.
Now, that could have been taught in the curriculum because teachers had a bit of
knowledge.
Not just knowledge, but they could play about with what they were teaching. They were just giving information. Now there's a set curriculum. Now you've got LGBT trying to be taught gay sex to 5-year-olds.
Correct.
We need to leave children to be children. You know, when you're saying, hey, Dad, I want to be a girl. Well, let's see what you're like in 10, 15 years, mate, and you're 15, 20. Well, no, I want to do it now. Some people are putting them on beta blockers and saying, well, let's see what you want to do. Well, you're fucking with kids. What you're doing. Let children be children.
Yeah.
One comment I saw from a guy, he said, he fell out. He's a guy called Owen Benjamin. He's a comedian. Have you seen him?
I've seen him on YouTube, yeah.
Well, he came off Twitter because he got banned from everything, and it was because he was saying to a friend of his who was putting a 9-year-old son on beta blockers because he's trans. He's saying you can't let the child be a child. He said, my child wanted to be an Autobot this morning. He wanted to be a dinosaur yesterday. Where are we drawing the line with this?
Mm-hmm.
Let children be children. But
the thing is, there's a case not long back. You probably remember it of a baby, or I think it was a baby, not a child, who needed treatment, and they had the funding and the go ahead to take the child to Italy.
Alfie Evans, yeah.
That's right, yeah. And the wife was saying, "Oh, that's terrible, not letting them go." And then they're going to go to the highest law in the land. I said, they won't get the right because that child isn't theirs. Because when you sign over your birth certificate, you're actually handing over the rights for them to take a child if they feel it needs to be. So they make the decisions.
Yeah, and the only way that child, me and you, the only way that they can get out of that is to show yourself alive. But that doesn't mean, hello, I'm here. It means on paper, this is me. Yeah. We have not reclaimed what is set there for us. Instead, we've been taught, like you said, to always be the debtor, because I have an understanding that there is actually 2 birth certificates. The birth certificate you refer to is the registered one. So when I was registered is different to when my arse was smacked and I took my first breath. That was my born day. So the date of my birth is not the date of my register.
Nope.
And that has that date of when you was registered. Now, going down the birth certificate route is a big rabbit hole. there's so many people looking into it. Somebody will get there. But the concept of it, it has to work that way because the Bills of Exchange Act works that way. So I know that the system is engineered that way. World War I and II engineered Europe for this. I mean, the EU is not a coincidence. You've done the work yourself.
Yeah.
So just again, going back to how this started to unfold, as you started to do this documentary with the knowledge that you had, did you find out more? Did you join more dots?
Oh, yeah. I mean, this knowledge, what I had, previous knowledge, which granted other people wouldn't have had, so they never ventured down certain avenues and roads, which obviously, because I had the knowledge, I'm thinking this is a good possibility down this road. So nothing actually stopped me or deterred me from taking it further than what most other people would have done.
I haven't seen anybody take it as far as you did.
No.
Definitely.
Well, the thing is that I even learned more after in the second and third documentaries, even though I think it's 6.5 hours long, the first one, overall it's about 18 hours. And people think, why is he doing so much? And to be honest,
so much.
I'm scraping the top of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Basically, what it was in a nutshell, what we're never informed of. I know religion doesn't mean much today, but that's probably because of 80, 90 years since the war. Because what I found out was, with 60 million dead Christians and millions of dead Christian women raped all over Europe, nobody's clicked. It was an actual holy war, declared in 1933 by Samuel Untermeyer when he declared a holy war on Germany, which was never revoked. And they took that into World War II. And what Hitler was trying to do, believe it or not, was trying to restore the Holy Roman Empire to replace the free monarch Europe, which had taken hold after World War One. All the countries in Europe had a Masonic or a Rothschild's leader. And what Hitler did, if you check back in history, he replaced all these leaders with Christian leaders.
Yeah.
And the reason they went into the Soviet Union was to preempt an attack by Stalin, which is ignored in Europe.
Yes. No, I understand that because what a lot of people don't understand, and I'm sure it's in your work as well, but what people didn't understand was Russia and Finland were already at war.
At war.
They'd already invaded Finland and were already at war. So
that's right.
This Uncle Joe Stalin image is a bit ridiculous. Now, because as you can tell, the economy is one of my things.
Yeah.
When I looked at the Weimar Republic after World War One and the devastation, the undermining, the routing out of the financial system, leaving people in abject poverty, where a Christian nation, God-fearing Christian nation, now has brothels where you can have sex with animals, with men, with women, anything that you want that you can pay for. And people were getting paid the wages in cash in those days, running to a shop with a wheelbarrow full of cash, and the inflation's gone up that much they can't afford a loaf. Yeah. So they're tipping the cash out in the street and selling the wheelbarrow.
Yeah.
Now that ended in 1933 when the Rothschild central banking system ceased to be in Germany, and they printed credit notes within their own country and then said, hey, Franz, do you want to do this job? We'll give you this much. We'll give you this house.
Yeah.
You can get a company. You can have a family car. You might even be able to go on a couple of package holidays. How do you fancy that rather than this abject poverty?
Exactly.
Hey, I fancy a little bit of that. Now, in 6 years, they went from wheelbarrows full of cash, can't pay for anything, to the second biggest superpower. Now, we in this country, in Britain, have done that once in World War One with the Bradbury. When we run out of money, we printed the Bradbury pound, which was our own credit note. It was the first time we balanced our books. That is how simple it is to fix the economy. That is why when people are crying about leaving the EU with no deal, who are you people? You sycophantic pussies. You've no balls to stand up and say, let's do something. I'll tell you what, stop paying the farmers not to grow things. Farmers, grow some stuff. We could be self-sufficient. Oh no, we've not got enough food, enough land to do this, and the soil's not this. Let's look at this. Let's have a debate. What can we do? Take control of that money supply, cancel all debts, start again.
Yeah.
What is wrong with that?
That will cause a war, though.
It will, but how how can it not now, Dennis? We're in a position, you know, we were talking about this rock and a hard place where people have been caught. People are caught now between the little bubbles where they're just about keeping all the plates spinning, working 3 jobs instead of 1 job.
And they've got women working as well.
And they've got the you know, everybody screams about women's rights and look at what they did to get your vote. No, that was funded so you could vote. Now we can get you into work. Now we can tax you. Hey, women don't smoke. Come on, let's get some women smoking. Give them big profiles. Look how cool they are.
Exactly.
And we're a herd species. We are a very easy species to
social engineer.
Yes, to not only social engineer, but to shepherd. You know, and we've got the wrong shepherd. We really have got the wrong shepherd.
We've got the only shepherd left now. That's a problem.
Well, only in this world.
Yeah, true.
In this world. But what I'm trying to get at is it's easier to fool somebody than it is to show them that they've been fooled.
Oh, tell me about it. I mean, what they try and do with the documentary, the first documentary, which was the icebreaker, really.
Yes.
They can't argue it because you can go fact check it.
Definitely.
It's all there. Yeah, right.
Definitely, I've done it.
Okay, so which I encouraged at the end of that video, and these people come back now, and instead of saying put up an argument, what they do is either ban it,
or you're anti-Semitic,
or don't watch it. It's nasty propaganda and this kind of. You're trying to prevent people from watching it because they know if they watch it, which a lot of, like yourself, it completely turns you around.
Well, I hadn't gone into it in the depths that you had, but I always knew there's got to be something more. You don't just get this man who does all this for his people, yet he's this evil thing. There's something else, and because of lack of information and stuff like that,
that's right.
I'd have to go and look it all out in separate things. And that's like conceptually trying to think, oh, well, how should I question that? How should I word it and all that? When you're going through the stuff I'm going through, which is defending your property, you're in court every other day and something other, it's too much to try and go and research that whilst you're trying to learn stuff that you're on doing. But then you come across a 6-hour documentary that has everything.
That's it all in there.
It has everything to start joining dots. And with the knowledge that I already had, I could easily bridge it and bounce from left to right and almost 3D print a better picture because I have more balance. You know, if you can't, to think critically, the reason, look at all these allies, they found Auschwitz, look at all these emaciated bodies, this is through gassing and starvation, okay. What about the supply lines were bombed by the Allies? There was typhus epidemic. There was no medicine. There was no food. Wouldn't we have this anyway? And then they said, well, look at this gas chamber. And then Fred Leuters stood in it. And he even said to me...
The top man in the world, by the way, on gas chambers.
Exactly. When I spoke to Fred, he said, Paul, he said, I was only there 10 minutes before any forensics were taken. I was there 10 minutes and I knew that could not be a gas chamber. Apart from everything else, dropping cyanide explosive gas in through a roof, if they're not going to kill themselves up on the roof, they're going to blow themselves up with the crematorium that's just behind them. This is not stable gas. It's got to be pumped in and extracted. There was one door and it opened inwards. And he said anything from 2,500 to 5,000 people they claimed in this room.
Yeah.
And the door opened inwards. They are going to go to the exit as soon as the gas starts. He said, I couldn't conceptually understand that. He said, and then I had to rectify with me that this was now 5 rooms knocked through into one with where toilet and bathroom facilities were.
By the Soviets.
And I'm going, well, there's something, there's questions here. There's questions, but you can't question.
Yeah, that's right. There's no chimney till 1947.
And the chimney's not even attached.
No, it's not.
There's absolutely no point. Now, when Fred went to the actual gas chambers, which were delousing chambers for clothing because of the typhus epidemic, you can clearly see where the gas is pumped in and then extracted out. It's all safe. This is German engineering.
Yeah, of course.
You can see the Prussian blue stain where the gas is oxidized in the brick, and it's formed this Prussian blue. There's not one blue stain in this thing where massive amounts of concentrated gas. There's questions. If you've got questions and you can't answer them, and you're being called names or you're being threatened by the law, there's something wrong.
Something wrong. Yeah, exactly.
And that's where I have to leave my conclusion. Again, this is going to cause controversy amongst people. I'm no doubt about it that, we don't speak German because of Churchill and stuff like that. But there's a bigger picture.
Well, it's a far bigger picture. I mean, that speech that you mentioned, the Churchills will fight on the beaches. He actually says a line in there which tells you the double talk that he actually did, Churchill. He actually says that this war, Christianity depends on this war. Well, in a way, we're right. But what he didn't say was the Christian nations fighting this war in Europe, what went into Russia, were Christian.
Yeah.
And they, as Great Britain, had sided with the Soviet Union. And if we could just quickly say, if you can look at World War II as if America and the Soviet Union were as one, and all run from the city of London, which brings us in.
Yeah.
France is also there because of the French Revolution. They were Masonic. The thing is, after
Germany surrounded. That's
right. 1917, when they won the Russian Revolution, that was funded by the US bankers.
Yes.
Which means, Lenin don't get the country and Stalin don't get the country. They're just jobs boys.
Yes.
In the end, it's the US bankers which control both East and West armies. And if you look at them from that point of view, the whole thing opens up.
Exactly. Now, again, you've got the people. Have you come across this in your research? Because there are a lot of open-ended questions in regard to Hitler. One thing is, what about the suicide? What about the connections with him living out his days in Argentina?
Right. Well,
have you any information on that?
Well, all I can say about the organisations what give out that information are not only the biggest liars in history on other matters, but they're no fans of Adolf Hitler and never spoke. If they all put a book out together, it probably wouldn't cover 6 pages. FBI, CIA, all these people, you can't trust them on anything. Never mind on Hitler, NASA,
Yeah.
So in that respect, so I don't believe he went to Argentina. I don't know how he died. I don't think anybody knows how he died. The official story was the suicide, but there's also another story which says that he actually died fighting, the communists and was killed in action. The thing is, I did read an article about a German SS soldier who was close to Hitler in the bunker, and he said, these are his words, not mine. He said he was taken captive by the British, taken over to London and interrogated. During that interrogation, he was given no food, no sleep. Just enough to get by on. And he quickly realised if he didn't tell him something he wanted, the question was what happened to Hitler. He was going to die. So he actually made up the story of Adolf Hitler committing suicide. Eventually was released, and when he got back to Germany, he was stunned to hear that was the official narrative, word for word, when he told the British under interrogation.
Yeah, I did read articles where they'd investigated it as best they could, and that the skull wasn't right and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, I've heard all this stuff. And again, it comes back to that point where, are the questions about this to be raised? Yes, there are questions, because it is not evidenced that actual truth as what the narrative is. The narrative, because information has now become more accessible, again, like you said, ignorance is a choice now. You can find out how big Jordan's tits are within 0.2 of a second if that's your.
If you want
to. You can also find out about, what was Hitler's version? It might take you to Mein Kampf and stuff like that. Mein Kampf is, believe it or not, is one of the biggest sellers now.
Second to the Bible, yeah.
Because people can understand there's a concept. Now, I've heard the stories about Hitler being a possible Rothschild, and that he was one of the boys, and this, that, and the other. For some reason, wherever this is going to take us, for some reason, he went completely against them. If that's the case, was it meant to happen like that? Was Germany meant to rise again and then be destroyed? I don't know.
I can tell you.
Go ahead, please do.
Right. Well, the thing is, if you look at World War I, that was a victory for the Rothschilds, who held the Treaty of Versailles. The Rothschilds
big time.
Yeah, big time. 120 Jews, I think, turned up. Well, people say with the leaders, but actually the minions, president and the prime ministers. And they decided on this treaty on Germany, who didn't start the war. It was Austria who declared war. And the thing is, few people know that 1 million, almost 900,000 Germans were starved to death after World War I to force them to the table and sign this treaty, which was the death sentence for Germany.
Yeah.
So the Pope was banned, and 3 Christian empires fell in that war. Russia, who fought against the Germans, true, but then there was Austria-Hungary, and then there was Germany. So 3 big empires fell. And so the Freemasons felt that was a total victory. And even Roosevelt, in symbology, he kind of announced the new order in 1933 when he brought out the dollar and the symbolism on the back of the dollar, which, to those who knew, what it meant was, 1, the death of the Catholic Church; 2, there's a new world order; and 3, it's the eye is the surveillance, which is going to come, and that's come. So basically, that then shifted on to World War II, because obviously there's nationalists in Europe. Even this went on before even Germany, where the nationalists were getting worried about the Bolsheviks.
Well, they didn't. What a lot of people I found didn't realise about World War I is that we were actually beaten. We were virtually beaten by 1916. By 1916, because the Germans had this new underwater boat that nobody had seen before.
Yeah.
So they were actually winning, and for the Rothschilds to come in and say, "Listen, we'll get America involved and win it."
Yeah, for the Balfour Treaty.
Give us Palestine. So there's a document there. It is all signed and sealed. Now World War II needs to come in so we can create this issue. And what an issue they created. Now, was the Jewish thing perpetuated by Hitler on behalf of the Rothschilds, or do you see it from the other angle where he stood up?
Well, I know where it come from. I know, but there's written evidence, which I cover in my 3rd documentary. So,
well, I'm looking forward to that.
well, what it says is this: as soon as Hitler came to power, he signed a concordat with the Vatican. The only reason he came to power was because the Vatican got him in power. And the reason they got him in power was because they were scared of the Bolsheviks. They actually told their own centre party to disintegrate and support Hitler. And that's what actually led Hitler to being the overall leader, the dictator, which they were happy with. They could control the Catholic education, where Hitler would then be, the protector of Christendom in Europe. Now, what they'll turn around and say, "Oh no, Hitler was a pagan. He only said them things to keep, he wouldn't get in otherwise." The thing, what people are never told about, is that Italy also signed a concordat. Belgium also signed a concordat. So there was a Catholic action before World War II in Europe to get nations to be ready for a Bolshevik invasion. So it flies in the face of all the Rothschilds rumours and whatever. Basically, the reason I'm saying the Vatican funded him, people like Ford funded him, and there's another German industrialist, Tyson, funded him, Franz Tyson. I mean, he had enough money coming from the Vatican, to be honest. The thing was that the Vatican was the first major institution to deal with the Third Reich. The Third Reich being the Third Roman Empire, Holy Roman Empire. Yeah. They were also the last, because at the very time the Vatican could have turned away and washed their hands completely was when the war was lost and the communist purge in Europe was going ahead. They didn't turn away from them. They got thousands out of Europe down to South America, and the final act in 1946, before the Rothschilds completely took over, was sending millions of dollars down to South America so these people could survive. Yeah. So you tell me, and that's, the facts are there, but you've got to dig deep.
Yeah. When I was reading things like about Poland and Danzig and the ethnic Germans that were being genocided by the Poles there, and Hitler kept trying to make treaties with Poland, who
I've covered that one.
They kept snipping at him, and he said, "Look, you either give us Danzig back." Because, I mean, after World War I, Germany was dissected and countries emerged that have never existed before.
Meant to die, yeah.
Exactly. So he said, "Look, we'll either have an autobahn to Danzig and the port, or give it us and you can have the autobahn. What do you want?
Yeah.
We're not taking you on, we're going to do this." So Hitler went, "All right, 29 days, boom. There's your peace treaty, Churchill. I don't want a war.
Yeah.
That was the first of what, 12?
22, I think.
20. All right. I know there was at least 12. So there's over a dozen peace treaties. They weren't good enough. All Churchill was saying, I want Germany's economy smashed to pieces.
Well, can I just say there's evidence on that now? Because the coloured book, invented by the British, is a book you bring out before war starts. I mean, after war starts, where you've got all the minutes leading up to that war to show who's causing it. And the British Blue Book was 100 pages plus. The German White Book was 400 pages. The British Blue Book doesn't cover any negotiations for 6 months before the war. And in the German book, it actually shows such a magnanimous offer of Hitler to get peace that even his own negotiators were stunned. So it's all evidence in print. That book, it was banned in America, so the Americans couldn't read it.
Yeah, I think that's what happens. If you look at things like, a lot of people I know will jump straight to mainstream articles about Gaddafi and Libya.
Yeah.
And I ask people, has anybody read the Green Book that Gaddafi wrote?
Yeah.
And none of them have. And I say, well, you do know that this man, gas, water and electric were actually free in Libya, and they didn't actually work unless they chose to, because immigrants came in and worked. They got $1,500 a month paid into the bank account just for being Libyan. That's quite amazing.
The richest country in Africa, weren't it?
And this evil dictator was doing that to his people. And you think, I've heard this story so many times through history. Where and when are we going to grab hold of history at some point and say, exactly, hey, we've done this before.
Syria.
We can see where we're going with this. It's madness.
Can I just say, right, I finally found out that all these revolutions, which I thought were individual, the Russian Revolution, the French Revolution, Spanish, this was the plan of a Jewish world dictatorship. So each revolution is attached.
You know, you're being anti-Semitic right now, don't you, Dennis?
I don't know what that word means, to be honest, because Semitic's an Arab. But
exactly.
Anyway, the thing is that they've continued this after World War II by going down into the Middle East, because you've got to take world domination, you've got to take various parts of the world. And that is why places in the Middle East have fallen, and there are some governments who are just given into, like Egypt. The thing is, it's a world revolution, and they're nearly there. They're not 100 miles away. So this protocols, which people call a fake, like Henry Ford said, well, you might say it's a fake, but everything in there is coming to pass. And it's nearly all complete. They said they'd destroy religion. They said various other things so that they would rule the world. And you look at Netanyahu at the moment, I've never seen anybody struck like him.
It's amazing, mate. I'm for the first time in my life, Dennis, I can't get enough information.
Oh, tell me about it, because it's an unbelievable story.
But it's about everything, because as I said to you off air, there's 98% of my history that has got to be in question, because these people are known liars. Why do people believe and defend known liars? We've got things that explain this, Stockholm syndrome, things like that. There's something wrong with our psyche.
Well, you look at immigration in Europe, for instance. People can't get their heads around that. But if you know the story of World War II, then it's not difficult to work out. They want to kill that gene. They want to kill that white German.
It's the Kalergi plan. They look at a demographic and they say, that's mainly whites. We need to put some ethnicity in there. Now, there's nothing racist about putting ethnics into a white community. Nothing racist at all there. But what it does do, without any racism, causes mistrust, because it's a different culture, a different language. It doesn't automatically adhere. You can't communicate, so you become suspicious of each other. The ethnics moving in will be suspicious as well, so it creates that atmosphere.
Yeah.
Now, on top of all that, you've got all this political correctness and mental illness being rolled out on top of all this. And you've got people who are ringing up saying somebody's breaking into my garage, and police come round 3 days later. They can come. Yet somebody, a woman in this country, referred to a trans woman by his real his male name. The police were round at her house within 40 minutes and took her to the police station for 7 hours.
Yeah.
And people think, yeah, but we're not in a dictatorship. What?
Well, that's the mistake they make, because that's democracy. Democracy is a recent kind of form of government which actually the left and right seem to be against each other, which they are maybe on minor things, but on the major things they're completely at home with. So the agenda never changes. Yeah,
I always say the foundations that the Tories and the Labour in particular, because they're the main two, but those foundations, the foundation they all agree on. The things they want us to argue about, they disagree on.
Can I ask you a question?
Let's go.
When you were at school, did you get taught about the Armada?
The Spanish Armada?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many Armadas were you taught about?
In history?
No, at that time.
I was taught the Spanish Armada.
Yeah.
I wasn't taught about anything like British or Dutch or anything like that.
Right. So you were taught there was one Armada, just like I was.
Yeah. And the Spanish Inquisition.
If I could tell you there were 3 Armadas and the Spanish landed, would you believe me?
Yeah, I probably would. I'd want to go and have a look myself.
Right. Well, if you look into it, there were actually 3 Armadas, and that came over a period of about 5 years. Right. And if I said to you, what stopped the first Armada? And you'd probably say to me, a vicious storm. And if I said to you, what's the odds on all 3 Armadas being stopped by a vicious storm, what would you say?
I would say one is okay, 2, oh, hang on a minute, and then 3 is a pattern. Right.
Well, what actually happened, all 3 were stopped by these storms, and not in wintertime, by the way. This was time, the Spanish knew how to sail. These were, good times of the year. And in the last one, 400 Spanish sailors landed in Cornwall, but they realised that there were no other ships landing.
I remember that. There was nobody else turning up.
That's right. So they left, obviously. But this is never mentioned in our history books. Obviously, 3 storms, 3 Armadas stopped is a big ask. So I went into look into it, and there's a guy who goes into the occult, because this is where it all Freemasonry and all this all stems from this. John Dee in the court of Queen Elizabeth was the main guy. He used to talk to these demons or angels. He thought they were angels, but they were demons. Anyway, so long story short, what it meant with the rise then, they were getting information. What this guy was saying, there was a world beneath us, which are microbes, which without a microscope, you could never see. He says that the belief is there's a higher one above us called the microbes.
Yeah,
they send all this information down at this time, so much so that universities had to be built. The stock exchange came about, and Britain, this tiny little army, or Ireland, should I say, went around the world to conquer all these countries. Yeah. All this technology, building bridges, railways, all this, far advanced to what the rest of the world was. So in the end, what I'm trying to say, is that there's a certain occult and an evil side to that empire and to what we're facing today, which is why Hollywood is a satanic place and other places, and whether you believe in Christianity or not, the Christian culture, which has dominated Europe for over 1,000 years. You look at the buildings around today, they're these horrible buildings, and the buildings they built back then were majestic. Well,
we had, I don't know if you caught it, Dennis. We had a guy from South Wales called Martin Liedtke on last week, and he's gone a lot onto the Tartarian history.
Yeah.
Now that I remember Tartars. I remember that from old books that my mum had. I remember seeing old maps with Tartaria on it. So as soon as this come up, it pricked my ears, because I thought, hey, I remember something about that from history years ago.
Yeah.
And then you see these massive, beautiful architectural buildings, and you're thinking, we don't build like that anymore.
No.
And see, the occult side of it makes sense with the Crusades. They went to grab all this information, this occultic information, and then kill everybody who knew it. Because once they killed everybody, it's like I always say: if I have control,
knowledge is power.
More information. Do you know? And I even dumb it right down to childlike situations. I said, do you know that if I had control so much over the information you had, you would be stood here talking to me saying that this morning you had a shit in your car and you drove to work in your toilet. If I controlled that language, if I just swapped those two words, that makes you sound like an absolute gibbering idiot. But we're all made into gibbering idiots.
Well, yeah. Well, what it was, as this guy said this, he also said that they asked the macros what they wanted because they don't do it for free, apparently. And they said blood. That's what they wanted.
That's demonic.
And plenty of it. So, you know, he's saying you look at the wars since that time, and there's always a huge death after the wars, as if it's a payment of gratitude for them winning that war. Yeah. So the obvious question to me was, well, let's see if there's any significant amount of death at the time of the Armada to warrant a sacrifice. So I looked into it, and don't forget, this is a storm what's destroyed this coming nearly. So there wasn't hardly any death on the side of the British. I don't think they lost one single ship.
Yeah.
But what I did find out was that the Crown refused to let the sailors, British sailors, dock. So they were left at sea on the excuse the Spanish might come again. The sailors actually thought, well, they don't want to pay us. The real reason was that they were all going to die of disease and starvation. And the total amount of dead for a battle which they didn't lose any lives and not one ship was over 8,000.
Yeah.
So is that a sacrifice, a blood sacrifice? It is in my book.
Well, this is...
And you can look it all up.
Yeah, well, this is what gets me about how society has now come to this fruition, because, you know, the passing legislation where you can terminate a call an abortion right up to delivery.
Just put it up now.
Some legislation is gone beyond delivery and up to the year of 2 years old. How can this is like, that is
blood sacrifice.
Yeah, it's never been that could never have been into our conversation 20 years ago.
That's right.
Definitely 20 years ago, you couldn't have brought that into conversation. I mean, I've seen a really ridiculous, this is how much things have changed in 20 years. Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, talks about a guy who becomes a woman to get revenge on people and becomes a copper. And it shows them, he strips her virtually naked to say, look, it's a man. And it doesn't look like a man because he's got boobs and no penis, until he stood behind him and he's took the cock and balls between his legs. But saying that now, that film cannot be made. It wouldn't be made if it was made now because of the political correctness.
Yeah.
It's absolutely disgusting that a grown man dressed as a woman, and I don't mean just dressed as a woman, but dressed as a drag queen, are reading stories to 5-year-old children. And I remember seeing this man say to this kid, well, yeah, do you want to be a superhero? I said, yeah, I want to be a superhero. And she goes, yay, you could be a drag queen superhero. And this kid goes, oh, he hasn't got a clue what a drag queen superhero is.
Because all the Disney films have been changed. They've all got homosexual prints now. So.
Well, you've seen the agenda coming, haven't you? You've seen the agenda coming.
This was all predicted. And yet they knew all this, which is why, when you're watching the Bush documentary, it's hard to hold the tears back, because once you realise what we really lost, which was humanity, then it dawns on you. And it's the reason why some people can't sleep for 2 weeks after watching it, because the mind is going over in the mind. They don't want to believe it, but yet they've seen the footage. I do get a lot of footage. And obviously, if they look into it themselves, find out for themselves, and it's traumatic to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, I've had to, because I am open-minded about that stuff. It hasn't hit me like that, because I knew there was something.
And a cushion there.
Yeah, and I've got to have that information. I mean, close friends of mine, they don't want to look, because they know that can't be right. And very, very close friend of mine said to me that the stuff I talk about regarding the economy,
Yeah.
she's because she's an intelligent woman. I know that she'd understand it.
Yeah.
And we got into a heated debate one night, and I won't back down when I know I'm right.
Sure.
If you tell me I'm wrong and give me a good reason, then I can go away and I can think about it.
Yeah.
But to say I'm a dickhead or a thief and I don't know what I'm talking about and I'm wrong, I'm going to argue that to the point where she snapped her head around at me and said, Paul, you can't be right. And I'll tell you why. Because I worked too fucking hard for you to be right.
Yeah.
And I backed off and I went, yep, get your point.
Yeah.
Get your point, because she's been taught survival within this system. But you're taught to survive whilst killing yourself. You know, I said off her, when you're taught to pay in a debt-based economy, you're making things worse.
Yeah.
So you actually create austerity and the government step in because of you paying bills in a debt-based economy. You can't get it more simple than that.
Yeah.
That education system that took our grandparents and our parents from World War II, because how many of one generation was killed from Britain?
Oh,
in
both
just
wars.
one war. Yeah, well, just that one war. But when you put them both together, you've got 40 years, basically 40 years of knowledge, of different types of education. There'll be some of those people that will have known about how a debt-based economy worked, because people did know then. But they were only the people who had access to education. Well, they gave education to all of us. But not all meant to be clever.
Twin-tiered. The what they call public schools, which are private schools.
Yes.
They are taught, and this goes all the way back to Plato. They're taught, the other side of history and the occult, while the general public are kept in the dark. And the reason why people won't accept that children have been sacrificed and all this, it's a different culture altogether on this other side. Demonic.
Yes, definitely. It's people won't allow themselves to look at that, because they can say, "Oh, you're a dickhead. That's just make believe."
Yeah.
All right, you don't believe it, but guess what? These do. These do believe it.
Yeah.
And you can't get away from questions, and you're being shut down from questioning, and that's dangerous.
Well, I went into Hollywood in the second documentary, and the music industry itself. I mean, Freddie Mercury, for instance, actually singing songs about one world, one vision, one voice, and things like that, and mentioning demons in Bohemian Rhapsody. And what the crux of it is that anybody successful in life, they got all markers covered, especially the music industry. If you want to go that extra step, to a higher level, then there becomes a decision to make. Do you go through the right door, or do you go through the left door? You don't go through any door. And a lot of these acts, which you'll probably know yourself, Bono's one, for instance, all the acts, in fact, who go through that door go on to be successful, Madonna and all that kind of people, and actually preach the New World Order and, the belief in Luciferian. But if you don't go in it, then you just stay at that level and nothing more said. It's a bit like Freemasonry.
Yeah, so, I actually heard.
Yeah,
I actually was directed to one article maybe a couple of articles that was stating that if you were selected for that next level, or if they thought they had something, they would ask you a question, something along the lines of, "Do you believe in Jesus Christ?"
Yeah,
and maybe to the point where they ask you to spit on the cross or something like that. And if you declined, they'd go, "Thank you very much, you're a good brethren," and you'd be on your way, and you wouldn't go any further.
You wouldn't know it, yeah.
Whereas if you was going to do something like that, they might go, "Well, we may have something for you." Now, we had, I'll get into this, but we're just coming up to 8 o'clock now, so Jason's going to play us a song if he's
getting away from the football, yeah.
3-0 down. But I want to get into a bit more of that in the second half.
No problem.
And see where we go. So, are you about, Jason? No bed, isn't it? Yeah, I'll be listening.
I'm here. I nearly fell asleep listening to you, Webby.
What's the score, mate?
It's 0-2 at minute.
Oh, who's winning?
0-2. All right, I'll play you a record. It's what do you want? Do you want 1 or 2?
I don't know, Dennis. What do you need a bit of a break?
Not really. No, just 1 will be fine.
Just stick 1 on with break.
Right. Okay. Right. Alrighty then, here's a record. Starting to see a conspiracy fooling me. They're manufacturing all over the news, giving me the blues, and it's time to start to wake. From all the thoughts they spread to run so deep, but I will lace no more. Who are they fighting for? It isn't me, but now I see there is a new world order, but we're not invited. So much blood and murder from the drones unsighted. World War III is haunting me. I've got to find a way to save my family. The human race has lost its way. We put our trust in science, but it's us who pay. Used to be civilized, but we've been compromised. We're on a one-way train. We've got to break this chain. Starting to see that we should be free. The powers that be want a piece of me. Should I do what they say or tell them go away? What is the price for freedom? Cause it sure ain't free. The time has come to raise the bar. There'll be nowhere to hide if there's a third world war. So let your voice be heard and let your heart decide to stand and fight for freedom while you've still got time. Wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up. Stand up, stand up. Stand up, stand up. Wake up, wake up. The time has come to fight. Wake up, wake up. Don't waste another night. Stand up, stand up. What are you waiting for? Stand up, stand up. Oh, we're gonna soon be at your door. There you go, Webby. You're on, mate.
Cheers, Paul. I wondered how I couldn't quite remember how that song finished. Right, so welcome back to Raconteurs News. You're listening to me, Paul Webster, because Jason's claiming he's watching a football game. But it's the Sheffield derby, so again, I'm not too sure about football. But I'm with my guest, Dennis Wise, who has been, shall we say, causing quite a stir by revealing new information that is related and joins a lot of dots, and to critical-minded people who want to think for themselves and not just be told. It's quite refreshing. So, Dennis, where did we end, and where would you like to pick up from?
To be honest, I can't remember where we ended.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll pick up from what I was going to bring up.
Sure.
When you was talking about the two-tier education system,
Sure, yeah.
We had a guy called Alex Thompson on who works with the UK column, and and Alex is from up this way. I believe it's Runcorn, somewhere like that, and he had a scholarship down to Eton. And I said to Alex, I said, well, down at Eton, Alex, I says, you lot are taught the Bills of Exchange Act by the age of 11. He said, yes, of course we are, Paul. How else will we steal all your equity?
Yeah.
And he says it in such a well-spoken accent. You can't even, because Alex is like saying, this is what they do.
Yeah.
You couldn't be annoyed at him. You know.
I totally understand. Yeah.
How else would we steal your equity? I almost felt like saying, oh, well, I'm sorry that I've caught you out with this. I really want to apologise. But Alex said it how it is. If these people know how the equity works in a debt-based economy and you don't, that knowledge is not just power. That knowledge is going to undermine you and your property. And the system does not allow a man to own property because it's only person related. So a person, which is a business, can only own titles, whereas an allodial title, which means land, every brick, every piece of mortar, and I think it's something like 6 to 12 feet down of the dimensions of your property, you own. That is your castle. You can't get access to that allodial title because they put so much in front of you.
And isn't the abolition of private property a plank of communism?
Isn't it just? Isn't it just?
A central bank and a progressive income tax.
Exactly. This is why people can't believe that Jewish Bolshevism and communism that was going to sweep the entirety of Europe.
Yeah.
You can easily see that because of the position that the US, Russia, and we took up, you can clearly see that we were saying, you're not doing this.
Yeah.
We're going to have this communist revolution. And I think, because I do believe the factions at the top levels of this elite system, Dennis, are fighting with each other at the minute for control.
It's big split at the moment, believe it or
not. They want to fight to control this one world order. You've got when you were saying about the Vatican and saying that we wanted to stop, some point that Vatican's been taken over.
Oh yeah, that was taken over in 46 for sure. Yeah. And then the Vatican II, which they brought in over 3 years, 65, 62, 65, that was the death of the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church does not exist anymore. There's people who believe in the old traditional faith, but the church itself is the Church of Freemasonry, which is the Church of Lucifer. And there's a million Catholics don't even know.
Yeah, and the Vatican itself is just a business title.
Yeah.
It's all corporate.
Yeah.
I mean, the Pope said today that anybody who's building walls are against humanity.
Yeah.
Where does he live?
Where
does he live? Behind a big wall in his own country, within a country.
Just like the elites do. Yeah.
Just like the elites do. Now, we can, if we're going to do anything about this, we've got to learn that we can talk to each other from grassroots. I want to be able to talk to my neighbour and say, hey, do you know that you might not know a lot about what you've based your life on? I want to be able to debate this and talk about it.
Well, it's probably because the reason why they banned smoking. Stop people going in groups into pubs, to be honest.
Look at the pubs.
Yeah.
The 22 pubs a day being shut at one point.
Exactly. It was a meeting point for local working people.
Well, I'm from Leigh, right?
Okay.
It's a mine town. It's a mill town. It was. It had its own wealth. It's had its own industry. Yeah. But the people that lived here were hard as nails. They worked hard. They fought hard. But they were salt of the earth. I grew up with those people that were still those people. You couldn't. You weren't allowed to walk down the street without people saying hello to you. Well, we get Tory, yeah, I'm right. You don't get that now. I purposely stare at people, Dennis, and if they catch me, I go morning, just to see what they do, because I know in London, one of my mates said, I tried this, Webby. He said, for all morning, I said morning to people in London, and each and every one of them, apart from the ones who weren't from London, looked at me as if to say, what the fuck are you talking to me?
I know. Oh, they got headphones on.
Exactly. And you think, right, I want to talk to people with this new information. I tried to put it on a local website.
Doesn't happen.
No, well, the admin thought I was trying to sell something because I was saying, listen, I can't get in touch with Andy Burnham. He won't speak to me.
Oh, God. No wonder.
Well, I'm just listening to the web bingos going up because every time I mention certain things, people are playing bingo now.
Yeah.
But Andy Burnham was Shadow Health Secretary at the time. And I wanted to go to him and say, look, every year, old people are dying because they're choosing between heating or eating.
Yeah.
My nan was exactly the same. She'd bake for us all day and then sit there with a quilt round her at night. I said, Nan, why don't you put your heat in? Oh, I can't afford that after baking all day.
Exactly.
Wasn't liable for it. Andy Burnham, Shadow Health Secretary, shouldn't you be doing something about this?
Jeremy Corbyn. Right.
His personal assistant kept me away from him for 4 years, and then he became...
I was a Labour voter all my life.
Yeah.
But Jeremy Corbyn, I found out, as all the other leaders at some stage, was a member of the Fabian Society, which is the root of communism.
But people don't understand. I've got a good mate of mine who believes that Jeremy Corbyn is the saviour.
Yeah, well,
I can't convince him, but I say, you do realise what the main emblem of that Fabian Society is, don't you?
wolf in sheep's
A
clothing.
wolf in sheep's clothing. I
So
said,
the tactics is named after Fabian, the emperor, who never did a full frontal assault. He would wait till that city starved, and then move in. So what he's actually saying is, one day it works so slow and so meticulously, and one day you wake up, you're in communism.
That's it. But that's it. That's what I think it was David Icke that termed it the totalitarian tiptoe.
Mm-hmm.
It's bit by bit, slowly catch a monkey. I mean, you can argue about whether a frog will jump out of a boiling pot, but if the analogy of turning that heat up so you don't notice it, that is what's happening until it gets to that point where you go, wow, it's fucking hot in here, and then everybody turns on and goes, he's a dickhead. And everybody turns on you. It's like a good meme.
What's amazing, right, I'll tell you, is the fact that if I want to go to a Muslim country and build a church, I've got no chance. But this agenda, what they have, of making Britain and Europe all under Islam, they've built mosques all over the place. They took over buildings and turned them into mosques. So there's got to be an agenda, because this wouldn't happen in Saudi Arabia. Just cut my head off. No,
well, it wouldn't happen in Israel. It wouldn't happen in Israel. I mean, if you are a non-Jew, you can't get married to a Jew in Israel. Right. It's racist. So the fact is, we've got people. I mean, there was a good. It wasn't a documentary. It was a clip I saw by a Jewish woman who was stating that Europe. How did she put it? Europe are currently going into multicultural.
Oh yeah, what's she called? Barbara Specter.
That's her. We're currently going into multicultural mode.
And what's the matter, otherwise?
And Jews are going to be very disliked for it because we are at the full frontal edge of it. And I'm going, so you're telling us you're pushing this agenda on Gentiles, on us.
Not voted for it.
Yeah, exactly. Why are you doing it? Is there a genocidal program?
Well,
to mention it, you're anti-Semitic.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you something, right? The race mixing started in 1920. Because like you said, the book was written, and what the French did after World War One, the Germans signed a treaty. They sent 40,000 colonial soldiers into the Rhine Valley. These are black soldiers from the colonies, armed to the teeth, looking at men they'd fought only 2 years before, and then looking at the women and taking them. And that's documented again. Managed to find stuff on that. It was hell on earth.
It's amazing, isn't it? Because I'm just not I'm just not sure of the history timeline anymore. There's been that much that's been hidden, and all right, we're finding stuff out about this.
Yeah, there's much more. We've got to be.
Yeah, there's got to be, the timeline has been adjusted somewhere. I mean, even if you were
talking about Tartaria, weren't you?
Yeah, even if you go back to the Gregorian calendar, where that has changed the timeline, because I know that I'm sure the Jewish calendar's in either 4,700 or 5,000 something. You know, we absolutely don't know. And then I remember seeing, as I said before, the Tartarians. I remember seeing that on a map and not knowing what it was. Yeah. Being a kid, it's probably not even interested because, you know, I was just a kid. But I mean, the names come back to me, and when I started to see this, and then mud floods, where I know people who are architects, and they wouldn't build a house with doorways and windows that are 20 feet underground. That just wouldn't happen. You could build basements and say, yeah, but there's some reason why when they've dug away this mud, that it disclosed all this stuff. And then you look at articles about America where they had to flatten 7 hills to build this town. Yet there's photographs and these magnificent buildings like courthouses and everything, they're all there.
Yeah.
And then you're looking at these pictures and you're going, where are all the people? There's only a few people here. Was this early one Sunday morning? Or
well, I mentioned them in that first documentary, not just by chance.
Say again, sorry.
I mentioned in the first documentary just by chance. I remember when all this came up, that Stalin, he did this with a lot of people, but with the Tartars, he sent them all over Siberia after they've been what he called contaminated by the Germans.
Yeah. I think it's going to take more than 3 documentaries to iron out.
Yeah, well, the issues that I work doing, so I don't know what I could do.
Well, do you know what, mate? This is how I looked at it, because I looked at information that I could stop the banking system.
Yeah.
If people just went and read it, I could stop them doing what they're doing, and because there'd be enough people to go, hey, hang on, we're not doing this anymore. But it's because of people not wanting, not being scared. I understand the fear. I don't know if I'd have ever done anything if it hadn't come and punched me in the face, kicked me in the balls, Dennis.
Yeah.
But
Mind control, isn't it?
it is. And do you know, I stood in many a courtroom shaking like a shitting dog, Dennis, but the judge didn't know it.
No.
You know, and it's about having, if you've got those principles, you know, you've been taught to work hard in a system that your parents said you must work hard, you must do this, and you've been taught, you've been
just like they have.
You've been flogged a pudding. It's absolutely, it's almost like, listen, if you pour petrol on yourself and then you decide to have a fag, you might set yourself on fire.
Yeah, yeah.
And do you think, well, that's okay? My dad always did it. And my mum.
One of the reasons I don't like Freemasonry is when you're in that court and you give that judge a signal, you're off and running, pal.
Yes, I know. I've heard it. I mean, I've heard people say, "Oh, ask, will nobody help the widow's son?" and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
and really, fundamentally, you do not know, and some judges won't know whether that works or not. They may be a bit more lenient. They may not. I just don't know. All I do know is that if you've got a judge, an MP, and they're involved in a secret society where they swear oaths to themselves.
Blood oaths, by the way.
Blood oaths. They are not going to work in a public office for the public because they will be controlled. They will be asked.
Yeah. The very fact the secret is undemocratic, so to speak.
Exactly what it will. See, I don't like democracy either, Dennis.
No. Percent to communism.
Yeah, I don't want 51% of the people telling me what I can't do.
It makes them right. Because
as long as I don't hurt anyone,
or
damage anything, I can do what the fuck I like. That's what life should be. Now, people that have got themselves into a position where it's a nanny state. I mean, I know a lot of people at the moment, people have gone for cannabis licenses and the governments are checking them out. They've got the license, all this kind of stuff, because they want to help people alternatively. Because I know many people who've had lots of success in at least easing their symptoms, even if I can't use the word cure. They have miraculously become free of cancer somehow. Even mainstream science, medical doesn't know how. Other than they're saying, look, I went on this THC oil and I've gone on an alkaline diet and it's helped me with this. These are my results. People want to help people genuinely, and they've seen that. And now all of a sudden it could be legalized, but it's going to be man-made cannabis. It's going to be synthetic because you can't patent a plant. So they're going to change something in that plant. So now they're not going to get the top quality. They're going to still have people who are going to die from cancer, or that's what they'll claim. Yet I've interviewed doctors who said 97% of cancer patients die of chemotherapy.
It's not good, over it.
It's not. So we've got to be able to ask questions. There is money being made from a pharmaceutical company that relies on the 1939 Cancer Act to state anything other than chemotherapy or radiation cannot treatment. And you can't have that. So there's money being made off our illnesses. We are treated. Our symptoms are treated because that's where the money is in the profit. It's not in the death, and it's not in anything else.
Well, I said they covered all areas, and that's one of them. Another area is the food. What goes in drinks, and it's all.
If you look at Kissinger, Henry Kissinger said, if you get control of people's food, that is it. That is it. We've got them. And, they're putting all kinds in the food. I used to be, if I was off work back at, let's say, go back 20 years, I'd be playing FIFA on my day off or something like that. And I could easily go through 4 litres of Pepsi Max. 4 litres of Pepsi Max. Every time I scored a goal, I'd have a gulp. Now, Pepsi Max has aspartame in it. I only needed to read that aspartame was from the E. coli bacteria excrement to go, I don't think that would be good taking it into my body. I'm going to have to stop drinking that. And then when I realised it was in everything diet, and it's 1,000 times sweeter than sugar, but it makes you obese.
Which is why a lot of people are obese, I presume. But there's another one as well, which I discovered. Can't remember the name. It's actually C. I can't remember the name of it. They actually gave it to pregnant women when they were before they gave birth. And what it did, it feminized the fetus. So you look around now, and there seems to be more homosexuals than ever, and that's possibly one of the reasons.
See, well, I can relate the information that I've researched. I can relate to the changes over the last 20-25 years, and it's
improved rapidly.
Yeah, it's already shown in studies that in the water supply in the US, it has turned animals gay. It's changed the genetic structure of animals and fish. There's something not right if they're ingesting this like we do, and it's not doing that to us. You know,
the cloning thing's another one, isn't it? Because was it Dolly in 1987? They cloned the sheep, and then scientists said, "Well, we're not going to take it down the human cloning." Are you telling me there's no scientists today cloning humans?
I'm telling you now that I'll put my money on the fact that they were cloning humans before Dolly the sheep.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
I can't get away from the evilness of what has gone on with the experiments on people through wars, and then experiments on people after the war, the MK Ultra stuff that, we don't do that anymore. What a load of bullshit. You don't stop something that works, you just go underground. We know this from history. You touched on John Dee. People will not understand that the Queen of England, who ruled everything at that time, relied on somebody who would do scrying, talking to demons that he believed was angels.
Enochian language, was it?
Yes, Enochian language and Enochian magic. Then you've got I mean, you can see the steps. Mr. Crowley is on another one. Loads of album covers of bands and T-shirts that people wear. Do what thou wilt. Jay-Z and Beyonce, do what thou wilt.
This is the link.
Satanic agenda that has been pushed slowly until people don't notice. The Vatican, the Pope has just had an imam deliver prayers at the Vatican because we're all going to the same destination. I know teachers who say, this is how we deliver RE. You're going to heaven on a bus, I'm going on a bike, he's going in the car, and he's going in the boat.
Well, worse than that, I know a teacher who's not religious and teaches arty.
That's it. This is what the point is. I mean, I have to say I've been really lucky, me, Dennis, because my parents weren't religious.
Well, so you seem to be pretty sharp, to be honest.
Well, I didn't get a dogma. You know, I didn't get any dogma attached to me about religion.
Sure.
I got a Bible because I started Church of England school. So my mum got me a Good News Bible with pictures in, and I was interested in stories, and I like to do a lot of reading. And I looked at them all and I thought, hi, Mum, what do you think of this? Oh, well, that's a story about Jesus, blah, 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 blah. So I asked all those general questions and then went to school. And then when we went to church, I didn't want to be at church. I didn't know this. But then a funny thing happened because I was about 8. And I came up, we lived in a newsagent's at the time. I came back in the shop, and back in the day, you know, once you went out, your mum didn't know where you were until the street light came on.
Yeah.
So I come back in one afternoon and she says, oh, where have you been? I said, I've been to church. And she went, church? She said, yeah. I said, I've been praying. I said, what do you mean you've been praying? Where have you been? I said, I've been to Sacred Heart. She went, that's bloody Catholic. And I went, what's the difference? 8-year-old, what's the difference, Mum?
Yeah.
And she couldn't give me a good enough answer. She just went, yes, it's Catholics, because my mum grew up in Liverpool with the Orange Lodge marches, and Catholics threw pepper into Church of England kids' Protestants' faces. And my mum didn't like Catholics because of that event.
Yeah.
Plus the fact that the only Catholic wedding she attended, she was walking in the church and the woman in front of her decided to genuflect. Well, when she genuflected, my mum was looking over her shoulder, yapping like she normally is, and my mum goes arse over straight over the woman. So all I ever got was from my mum was bloody Catholics. You know, and
well, 300 years ago, my wife's, I'm a Catholic and she's a Protestant, you know, there would have been hell to pay for her to marry me.
Oh, mate, it got even better for me because after that, like, my mum was Methodist. I was Church of England. I think my dad might have been Methodist as well, as in schools. None of us had a religion.
Right.
But, where's I going with that then? I get all these things coming into my head, and I'll lose track of what I was saying.
Well, on the theme of religion, I've always believed, I can't prove it, right? I've always believed that the Anglican Church is a cover for Christianity for people who aren't Christians. When I watched the British Olympics, London Olympics, I looked at the royal box while everybody was watching this. Someone was coming down with a jetpack. The idea was Lucifer. They just had a phoenix blown up and flames. So why all this in a sports screen? Nobody knows. But I can see what they're doing. Anyway, as he's coming down, I'm looking at the royal box, and the Archbishop is having orgasms, truly having orgasms, watching Lucifer coming down. And of course, the Queen's a Druid, and Prince Charles is a Druid. Goes back a long way, all this.
I know.
It's Luciferian doctrine.
It is. It's Babylonian.
Yeah.
Everything. People can't take it all the way back to the Queen's family will tell you that how far the bloodline goes back.
Yeah.
All the way to Babylon. All the way.
Yeah.
All these bloodlines do. With me, what happened with me when I met a girl who became my wife, who I've got a daughter with. We're not married any longer, but we're good friends.
Yeah.
My wife was Catholic. Or should I say my girlfriend then was Catholic. I'm Protestant. Her family are not practicing Catholics, but her dad would not go to a Protestant church.
Yeah, I get that.
My mum is not a practicing Methodist or Church of England, but would not go to a Catholic church.
Yeah.
But they both agreed on Methodist.
Amazing. Yeah, amazing.
And I said to them both, if either of you, can ever explain to me, apart from the length of time the service takes, either of you can explain to me the difference between Methodist service and your two, anytime you like.
Well, I think English Protestants is different
than
the European one.
The fact is, a king couldn't get divorced, so he made his own religion up.
Exactly, yeah. And after that, they stole all the gold and the land, the church's land and everything.
So how, in all that control mechanism, how the hell were you ever meant to find Jesus, God, anything in the Bible when you've got all that control in front of you first? And as you just said, the Anglicans, you've got Seventh-day Adventists, you've got Mormons, you've got all these things.
Yeah,
I mean, the Mormon connection with the Freemasons, that's, everything is interconnected here. All these religions will let you get away. Hey, you can't do that in that religion, but you can do it in this because we interpret this gospel, and look how we interpret this. The fact is, any man or woman who reads the Bible will interpret differently. I guarantee it, because it's meant to the reader. If you don't get it, you don't get it. You've got to keep reading it.
One of my buzzwords is red flags go all the way. If ever I hear Oxford University, because that was built by Druids, run by Rothschilds, and the New World Order is taught there, as Clinton was, in the Rhodes Scholarship. So when somebody says Abba's an intellect, he could at Oxford University, red flags go up everywhere, because he's ever going to say one thing, and it won't be good about Germany.
See, this is another thing. What gets to me, because you cannot. How the hell are you not allowed to talk about factual things and be called out as anti-Semitic and see people put into jail when they're actually talking about people and events that have actually happened?
This happened in the Soviet Union, exactly the same.
I found out, during my research, I realised that over 260 times, this tribe of people that you can't talk about, over 260 times has been kicked out of 260 countries in 2,000 years.
Yeah.
Now, you've got to ask yourself that question.
And not one was because of the religion.
Exactly. Now, I've just written 2 words down here because I found this out, which was a new one to me. I knew that there was a lot of fuckery going on with them.
Yeah.
Coin clipping. Have you heard of coin clipping?
I haven't heard of it, no, usually though.
Coin clipping goes back to when we actually used money, gold coins. The Jews were filing the edges of the coin and taking the gold dust off it. So they were lightening the weight. Yeah. But they were pocketing the weight.
There's somebody else who could think of things like that, isn't it? You just don't go down the road, do you?
Yeah, well, exactly. You wouldn't think of something like that. But I'll tell you what, I know a lot of Asian lads. And the Asian lads who are savvy with money, they don't use usury.
No, they don't.
If they lend money,
Catholics didn't want to.
Hey?
Catholics didn't before they were taken over.
Exactly. Well, the Asian lads even said, you know what, we couldn't do that. We couldn't do that to people. And I'm saying, why not? He said, because it's not right.
Morally wrong, isn't it?
It's morally wrong. And
Jews have done a lot of unmorally things.
Exactly. But see, the Muslim, I know so many Muslims, and they don't agree with the Sharia bollocks and all this, because I had one lad say to me, my family, and I think he was 3 generations, and he said, my family came here to get away from Sharia law. If they want Sharia law, fuck off back to their country. That was from him, not me.
What I can't get my head around is these left-wingers.
Hey, Dennis, I've got to stop you there, because me and Jason were told we're far left.
Well, a lot of these are homosexual, and they're saying, bring all these Muslims in, whatever. And they're the ones who get thrown off the roof first.
This is what I don't get. I don't understand. Bring them all in. Do you realise that you're being thrown off buildings with headless bodies just because you're gay, and you want to invite them here because you say that they'll be different, because you should be tolerant? That is very naive. That is very naive.
I'll tell you what's dangerous. We've got footage shown in prisons, on TV for the last, 15 years maybe, of us bombing Muslim cities and conquering Muslim countries. And all the time we're letting all these Muslims in who don't integrate normally. They have their own sections in society. But the prisons at the moment are overloaded with Muslims who hate us. Now, in the Soviet Union, when they caused chaos for the revolution, what they did, they opened the prisons. They opened the prisons in Libya and several others. And it's the first way to cause chaos in a country. Because if you can imagine now, all the prisons being opened and all these Muslims are coming out, they haven't had sex for God knows how long. They've got hatred after seeing Libya fall and seeing Iraq fall. It's not going to be a pretty sight if this happens.
No, the Muslims you're talking about are these ones who've already been, I don't know what word.
Indoctrinated.
Yeah, indoctrinated and activated.
Yeah.
Muslims that I'm talking about, 3, 4, 5th generation that are already here.
Yeah.
These are saying these are dickheads. We don't want these here.
Yeah, but they will be dominated by these dickheads. That's
what I'm saying. If they get a foothold, they will be dominated, because that will come in with these people. But the ones who are here, the guys and girls who I know, they're fully integrated. There's no difference. There's no difference between, yes, you're a Muslim, I'm not. Yes, you're a different coloured skin, I'm not. There's none of that. You just get on. I mean, Christ, I know people from Double, and they all integrate, and they're all ducking and diving. The Asians run Double, but you can go and barter with them. You can, hey, I want a tie, I want like...
Sure. I mean, I've done that myself. But there's a town, I think, in Yorkshire somewhere, which is almost Muslim. Every one of them, almost Muslim.
Say that again, sorry.
There's a town, a small town in Yorkshire, where if there's 3,000 people in the town, 2,943 are Muslim.
Yeah.
And eventually over time that'll happen, because they have more babies than us.
Well, that is now if you're going to get down to the nitty gritty, where people, when somebody says that the white Europeans are being bred out, people think that is a very fantastical thing to say, until you realise that there are imams who are very jihadi, stating that we will breed with you and breed you out. And the Jews love that idea.
Well, of course they do. They're the ones instigating it. I think they had a meeting in 1995 in where the hell was it now? I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was in a country where Muslim leaders were there, obviously Israel leaders were there, and people from Britain, and they decided there and then that they're going to open the doors for Muslims to come over from Africa and other parts, and give them all the welfare, give them all the money they need, to housing especially. You're welcome to come in, and I suppose any country which is in dire straits like a war, you will get a lot of these people coming in. Well, that's just an excuse. It's just a cover for what's been going on for years in Germany.
But then we've got to join in the fact that these people are being supplied. I mean, I'm sure I read yesterday that we've just given 160 million in humanitarian aid to Yemen, but we're selling fucking arms to Saudi Arabia to create the humanitarian situation that is there.
Correct.
And you're going, well, hang on, you can't keep doing this, because we can see, it's like the curtains pulled back. We can see the wizard as the little elf fellow doing fuck all. But the emperor is bollock naked. And you're looking around to other people and going, can you not see this? No, what? Look there. Oh, no, I can't see that. Are you kidding me?
It's true. It's true. I mean, in France, Sarkozy threatened to bring out laws if the French didn't mix with Muslims.
And they can bring out those laws because of it all being man-made. The trouble is when you're raising these points, it's like when I mentioned that the Jews love that, you've got to then incorporate the fact that, listen, these Jews that we put in inverted commas aren't necessarily Jewish, but they are saying that they are Jews. And in the oldest book that we can relate to, it states that there is a people that will claim to be Jews but are not. Yeah.
Listen, I don't believe Jesus was a Jew. People will look at me gone out. That's only because what's been changed in the Bible and what words have been used down the years.
Definitely
a Jew comes out in 18th century.
There's definitely fuckery that has gone on, and you've got to be able to ask questions. When you're shut down, there's something not right, Dennis. There's something not right. You're being shut down. What, with all the best will in the world, and we've had people on with this talking about, even Martin, who did the Tatarian stuff. He started out with flat Earth, and he wanted to debunk flat Earth, right?
Yeah.
And all he ended up was with questions. I did exactly the same thing. Yeah. When I realised that everything I've been taught is only mathematical theory, and in mathematical theory, an elephant can hang off a cliff with its tail tied to a daisy.
Yeah, that's for sure it could.
But if I try that experiment in real life, I've got a dead elephant and no daisy. So I've got to ask questions. When I ask a simple question like, okay, you state that if it's not a true vacuum in space, it's a partial vacuum. How does a pressurized system exist next to that without a barrier? I don't know anyone that can show that in natural circumstances. So we can't say science tells us this, because science, we would be able to view it, we'd be able to observe it, as that phenomenon, and we can't.
They know the knowledge. That's the problem. I don't believe we ever went to the moon.
Well, you've seen the latest NASA, haven't you? The moon.
Mars.
No. The latest from NASA is that the moon is actually in Earth's atmosphere.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah,
NASA has just changed 60 years of history.
NASA can do what they like because they are what they are, and have lied ever since they've been established. Because they're not a government organisation; they're private again.
Well, now we touched on that. What information do you have about Operation Paperclip?
Paperclip was a fact that the Germans, now, we could be going down the road here. Yeah. They had a technology superior to anybody else. People say that it could have been alien technology. I looked into that side of it. I didn't want to go into that side of it because I thought there was enough information to absorb, as it were, the first one. But I've looked down that way. I can talk about that in a minute. But the scientists, even though they plundered everything from Germany and these rockets, they didn't know how to work them with that advanced, the American scientists. So and Stalin did the same. He just plundered the scientists. Obviously, the Americans offered them, you've either got a choice of Stalin or Germany wrecked. So, the family and everything else went over to America. You can't blame them. War finished. But that's all it was, right? But they're making more out of it. At one point, Alex Jones was saying the Nazis are running America and all this kind of carry on.
Yeah. We can debate Alex Jones all day, every day.
That's been proven, hasn't it?
I mean, gatekeeper or not, he gave a lot of information out that joined some dots for me.
Well, he did. He did. But then he has to be plausible.
Yeah, well, he has to, because he has to play that game. He can't just... Imagine how easy it would be if these people could just keep on telling lies and didn't have to follow what seemingly is rules that are set in stone, that they actually have to tell us what they're doing. Because in this weird and wonderful reality that we don't know how it actually works and how we manifest things and how we experience things, they have to give it to us for us to actually manifest it for them. They can't do all this on their own. The best deception ever was a copy. and then make them believe that he doesn't exist.
Yeah.
What we've got the copy. We are getting the system that we're already in. It's whether people who have eyes can see and have ears can hear.
His greatest deception.
And that's where I'm at with this stuff now, because if you're not willing to take in all information, good, bad, indifferent, you're missing something. I would love people to keep giving me information, but don't keep spouting the same old shit.
Well, as far as the alien side of it, I was told by a guy who I believe was believing he was telling the truth. And he said to me that the Germans had the Bell technology, but they only had 2 or 5 discs. So they couldn't go all the way with it, but certainly did better fancies. And I've seen footage of some aircraft which wouldn't look out of place today, stealth, for instance. And what he said was that a team of SAS went into the Middle East after World War II, it must be about the 50s, I think, went into a room full of Arabs, killed everybody in the room, and took the 2 discs and handed the 2 discs over to the Allies, who had 3 discs. And now they've got the complete set. Now, he's been interviewed by Oliver Stone's son. They actually offered him, I think, about £40,000 just to hold the rights on the film. They might not make one, but at least they got the rights to it. And he wrote a couple of books on it. And he was a member of that SAS team. But the reason that I didn't take it any further with him is because it was starting to affect my research. Because obviously, I'm being told that the war was fought on behalf of Christianity. And so it was starting to affect me in some way, which I didn't want. I'd already gone down certain roads and it paid dividends. And so I continued with what I was doing. But that's not to say what he was saying was wrong.
No, but you have to go with your gut, don't you?
Of course.
You have to, because if you go against your gut's always going to go, told you to go that way, told you to go that way.
Exactly.
Whether it's right or wrong, you've got to do it.
You've got to do it, yeah.
Question for you.
Aliens,
interdimensional or interstellar?
Interdimensional.
I agree. I don't believe that we've
I believe Crowley could raise them.
I believe there's been a few that's get Now, I know we're going a bit deep into spiritual. Now that the veil is getting thinner, that you can see that this evil is just being unleashed. I mean, look at the state of the world, what is happening on a daily basis. I have friends who refuse to look at mainstream media because something worse happens every day. Their words, not mine.
In the same documentary, right, I prove without any shadow of a doubt that George Bush and all his neocons are all communists, which was a shock to a lot of people. Yeah. So all these wars after that I've been talking about are all still communist wars. George Bush, senior and son, were both neocons and followers of Trotsky. And George Bush senior once said to, in conversation, if people knew what we'd done, we'd be hung from lampposts in the morning.
Yeah.
And I believe him.
Yeah, they know that.
Yeah.
They know that the American people would hang them because of what they are doing and what they've done.
Pure evil.
Pure. The purest, but people don't believe it. I mean, I don't know if you saw, did you see the, I can't remember what it came out of now, but when Bush and McCain allegedly passed away,
McCain, my God, yeah, go on.
They were taken to Guantanamo and put on trial and executed. Now, they were saying they've been left with they've admitted that they've done all this because there's a lot of people who post a lot of information. Some friends of mine on Facebook,
sure,
who are big Trump advocates, big Trump followers, because they've got this belief that Trump is actually doing something, changing stuff, and they've got a belief from this source of information.
Well, I'm open-minded as you are. I've learned too much in the short space of time not to be. So I can't deny anything you're saying because it may well be true. That's what I'm saying. We've got to be able to ask these questions. Yeah. Because if you're shut down on something, you can be shut down on anything. Shall I tell you the problem with Trump? Go on. The problem with Trump is he's not America first. He's Israel first. Yeah. He openly admits it, right? Yeah. And he was talking about there's some Jews now, high-leading Jews, pressurising Trump to bring in. He's already got the embassy in Jerusalem, but they're now pressurising him to bring in the no-hide laws. Do you know about them?
No.
Right. These are 7 laws which come from the Talmud, and they were instigated.
These can't be good then.
Right, I better believe it. But when George Bush Sr. was in presidency, he actually allowed these laws to be brought in to the American system. They haven't been instigated yet. They're going to be instigated when they think the time is right. And they're pressurising Trump now. And Trump, being Israel first, if he gets the chance, will implement them. And these 7 laws, when you first read them, oh, that's not too bad. But there's a certain law, certainly for Christians in there, that if you pray to any idol, like a statue or a rosary, the death sentence, and that's a guillotine.
Yeah.
They will behead you. And there's a couple of other laws in there people won't like. And people, at first when I mentioned it in this 3rd documentary, said, no, and I directed them to a place where to go. And I've heard from them since.
Well, that would fit in because, I mean, I read articles, I'm going back 8 years or so ago now, where they were talking about the America being dissected up into these 13 regions.
Correct.
That have all got FEMA camps.
Yep.
And they're already put out to tender to up and running within 48 hours or 72 hours of saying
well,
we need them up and running.
Bush is a neocon or Trotskyite. That makes him a Bolshevik.
Yes, of course.
The Bolsheviks do exactly the same in Russia, and they're going to try and implement the exactly the same in America. I brought a video out a couple of weeks ago where there's a guy who was making a film on the FEMA camps because there's never been one. And he was making this film, and mysteriously he got shot, his wife got shot, his child got shot. But they said it was a mass suicide. But there's obviously, thought there. What he did, he made a promo of that film and didn't bring the film out. The government brought a film out on YouTube with the same name. It's not the same film. And what he did, he made a promo. And in that promo, right towards the end, now you tell me why should he do this? He's a Freemason with an apron, wearing a mask, right next to a guillotine.
Yeah.
Because Freemasonry has been the problem from word go, way back.
Well, again, I've got good friends who are in Freemason.
Yeah.
They've actually joined it because they see it as a networking thing and a connection. They just don't see.
They don't see it, no.
They don't see the.
Well, they're not supposed to see it going to Pike.
Hey?
They're not supposed to.
Oh, well.
According to Pike.
They wouldn't have anybody joining.
Oh, exactly.
They see it for their benefits, and they see how greedy people want to be and see what they've got to offer.
Yeah.
If you're quite high up in society, I mean, I always go back to the I don't know if you've seen it, Dennis, the Tim Fortescue interview in the 70s. Lord Fortescue, have you seen it? Well, if you Google Fortescue, and I can't remember, just put Tim Fortescue in that speech, and he was asked by a BBC interviewer, and he said we'd be approached by somebody, say, involved in a scandal, and maybe it's debt or young boys, and we would make it go away. And he said, then we'd know that we'd use that and store away some brownie points. So when he was of use to us, we would say, hey, do you remember when
People did that with Trump, I think.
Blatantly admitted it on television. Yeah. And people still think that voting will change something. Now, that is the definition of insanity, Dennis, to keep repeating the same thing and expect a different outcome.
Well, the only thing what changes things is war. So if something changes and there hasn't been a war, I'm suspicious. Because that's the only way. People who win a world war will not be removed by you voting or me.
No, but that's what the problem is. That they are going to take it to a world war before people have chance to get out of the house and say, hey, you're going to stop ripping us off.
Yeah.
That's what they're trying to rush us through now. But they've created that much bullshit. Nobody buys anything what they're saying. I mean, this rubbish about, we've already discussed this EU. We know how deep these connections are. To think that all of a sudden the EU has got the people of the world in its benefit to say, we really want to help you and we're not going to do anything to you, we're going to help. I don't get it. I really don't get it. That's That's not even childlike. I mean, if you treat a child badly, it's going to become wary of you.
Eventually, yeah. Well, there's two things, right? There's two things which really, really stunned me. One of them, which I was never told about, I never missed it, I'll never know, is the Americans never took prisoners in World War II. There's no prison camps on these islands of Japan. They said that the Japanese, for instance, they committed suicide because they didn't want to surrender too much honour. They committed suicide because they kept a bullet back, just like you kept a bullet back for the Bolsheviks, and you kept a bullet back for the Apaches. So what the Americans did to the Japanese to force them to keep a bullet back, I don't know, but I know it's not good.
Well, I do know that they may have not had concentration camps over there, but the German camp that they had, the Eisenhower.
We're a camp, really, were it?
Oh, it wasn't a camp. There was no shelter. There was no food, no nothing. And the rhetoric from what I read, from all the articles I read, was the only good German was a dead German.
Yeah.
But we're not taught that. We can't hear that our heroes couldn't do that, because reading and watching your documentary and seeing people's testimony saying the Red Army was the worst, but to say that the Allies were any better,
because they were the same source,
of course, and
same leaders.
They're giving the same. This is your booty. I mean, the Russians were dropped on. This is your legitimate booty. Take this.
Oh yeah, they were told to do it.
Take these women and do this. And
kill that gene.
The fire bombing of Dresden.
Another one.
And you're going.
All the cities, Hamburg, all of them.
And you're going, what the hell? We're not
targeting civilians, babies, granddads.
Yeah. Exactly. We are not taught this. So, and then people justify that, and using cognitive dissonance. We're at war. Yeah, but we didn't need to be at war. We were propagandized to war. We were pushed to war. They used to use all the trigger points. Yeah. Nothing's changed in this.
They've ruled us for 300 years now in Britain. People don't even know that we've been occupied. That's the problem. Well,
people have said, somebody posted a few days back, they're going to install martial law soon. I mean, you do know we've been under martial law since the Napoleonic Wars at the very least.
Look at the miners' strike.
Oh, God, it's unbelievable what people take, because, I mean, all right, maybe there's going to be a bit more reservation in sending the army into somewhere like Peterloo.
But I don't think they've got any reservations, to be honest. These are ruthless.
Yeah, well, that Peterloo massacre, you see.
Manchester,
I watched the film. My friend's son was actually one of the extras in it, so there was an incentive to actually watch it. But I was interested in the story, and to see these poor people in Manchester saying, we can't get bread because the farmers won't let us import it, so all the prices are going up. Exactly. Yeah. So they're getting together to discuss this. And because in Parliament and in London, they didn't like that, they sent the army in. Yeah. And, because he'd just come from war, he opened fire and killed all these innocent people.
And Churchill sent them into Wales as well. So Wales sent them the strike.
They're hungry, are they? Fill the bellies full of lead.
Yeah, this war
absolutely ruthless. So there's nothing heroic about war. And when the winners write it, yes, they're going to write that they were the heroes.
Well, he said that in Churchill. Yes. I know it's just going to look good on me because I'm going to write it.
Exactly. And to think that man never had a job but always had money. You are looked after if you come from the right background. And if you're wanting to follow the agenda of everybody, it's like, have you ever seen the film They Live?
I haven't seen it, but I know of it.
You should watch it.
And puts his sunglasses on.
Yeah, but there's a part in it where the guy's got a gun on a guy who's in a suit, and he's saying, "Come on, man!" He said, "They control everything. They'll let us have some good stuff if we just help them. What's wrong with having it good for a bit?" That's it.
Yeah.
They prey on that greed, and if you look at any man, the inequity that is within a man. I mean, Christ, Dennis, I'm 47 years of age. If I've not got darkness in me, then I must have lived a great life, and I know I haven't. Yeah. I know I've had to explore that darkness. I know I've had to accept.
That's not easy.
No, it isn't. In the last 12 years, I could have possibly not been in this world twice. Not through any acts of my own. Never thought of that.
Just by chance.
I was beaten. I was beaten. I had police called on me for asking questions, and that does something to you. It does something to you, Dennis, when you, you know, the only time I got in trouble, not even in trouble with the police, was when they thought I'd been underage drinking, and they'd come round to my house because somebody had grassed me up. Well, by the time I got home, I was well sober. So there's nobody to prove anything. So I've just got a talking to.
Yeah.
It's that's the only thing that the police have ever knocked on my mum's door for. And she said, if the police ever knock on my door, you won't sit down for weeks. But
well, that's the problem, because the police are probably more corrupt than anything. Well,
the police have definitely, like I said, the good people I knew as coppers aren't in the police anymore.
No, they've changed it now, and it's on a kind of a bonus thing. You've got to book so many people, to get a bonus and whatever.
Exactly, but you see the progression, because I always use the US as some form of guide, because if America sneezes 8 to 10 years later, we're catching a cold.
Correct.
And the principles of what's coming with the changes in this. I mean, don't forget, we've been talking for 10 years now, prison for profits. We're trying to stop that, because in America, they signed 95% occupancy rate contracts with the government. So if their jails were not 95% plus full,
they wouldn't make any money.
The private company didn't have to pay for it. So the federal paid for it. So every jail, before the private companies decided to spend any of their own money, they had to be 95% occupancy full. That's not aimed at rehabilitation.
Well, it's
That's
not, because they stopped all the boxing programs, haven't they? Which they used to have in the 70s.
And in America, in like state of Louisiana, you've never been in trouble with the police before, caught with one spliff, 10-year mandatory. That is keeping people in jail and putting people in jail.
Strike as well.
And we've had it over here with the IPP scheme, indeterminate prison sentence. I know lads who have done 15 years over a 6-year tariff, and they're still not looking. They're still not looking to be given a chance. Yet there's people on turnstiles, mate. Yeah, he's just been released. 2 weeks later back. It's unbelievable. There's nothing orientated towards the men and women of the general public to help them in any way whatsoever.
No way.
Build with banking, with ailments, with anything. It's all to take off us. And the system, and our parents who went through the system and our grandparents before them have taught us to do exactly the same thing that takes us to the floor and kills us off.
Yeah,
and until those people see it, or it encroaches on their perfect little bubble, I'm not going to be invited to parties like I'm not anymore, because I can't sit and just talk about football. And
exactly.
Can't do it. Not when I've got
there's a price to pay there.
It is, and not when I've got my daughter. She's very, very skilled and talented in photography. One of the most natural I've ever seen, and maybe I'm biased, obviously. But academically, when it comes to politics and banking and stuff, she wouldn't have a clue. She lives in a cucumber castle on top of a cherry oak tree with unicorns.
It's not her fault.
No, it isn't, and it's the reality of this world. She's innocent to that, but I know it's going to encroach. Well, it's
this Fabian thing. Hitler once said, "You cannot blame the people who have been propagandized, because it's that good."
No, it is, and there's one thing. Tell a lie, make it big, and keep repeating it.
Yeah.
People eventually, because the doubters peter away. They get old and die, or they die and they get killed. If they're too, there's always somebody going to say, "Oh, that was he just died accidentally." I had somebody only in October last year. A friend of mine's wife said, "So you don't believe that Osama bin Laden did 9/11?" And I looked at her and I'm waiting. You're going to crack a smile in a minute, surely. And I went, no, I really don't believe that 19 Saudi Arabians, directed from a fella in a cave in Bora Bora, fulfilled 75% of the targets and beating the most surveilled airspace in the world. No, I don't believe that. Believe it or not, I don't believe it. Especially when you've got these Saudi Arabians that are still in the official narrative that have turned up alive. There's something not right. The Israelis, the laughing Israelis on top of the van that got arrested and deported.
Switching off the planes.
And turn up on Israeli TV live, being escorted from the airplane on a red carpet, and they said, "Why were you arrested?" And they say, "Well, they thought we were part of Mossad, but we weren't. We were just there to document the event."
Which meant they knew before the actual event.
You had pre-knowledge, so something's not right. So I couldn't believe. And when I said those few things, she shrugged her shoulders, because it doesn't matter to her. It doesn't matter 3,000 people died in New York, because it doesn't affect
no Jews,
us.
by the way.
And it doesn't affect us.
They all got texts on the phones.
Well,
Don't go to work today.
Larry Silverstein,
Another one.
100 for what was it, for £1 million? He created. He after 2 successful insurance claims, he got 7 billion.
Yeah,
that's not bad. That's not bad.
No.
Anyway, Dennis, time's flown, mate. It's 9 o'clock. I could
Good talking to you, pal.
2 hours with you, pal.
Yeah, it's no problem.
I'd love to have you back on again.
Yeah, anytime. You just give us another.
We know this is,
you know.
we know that this is going to just blossom and blossom and blossom. Whether shall we say, the fruits that these trees are going to bear are going to show us and tell us what we need to do. So I now need to shout Jason to see if he's crying in his hands or not. Are you there, Jason?
Yes, I'm here. Yes, I'm not crying in my hands. No, it's
still 0-0.
Still 0-0. Yeah, we're into send off.
Sounds as interesting as the Merseyside derby on Sunday.
yeah, just about. Yeah, something like that.
Shame about Hillsborough, by the way, weren't it?
Yes. Well, we've had an interesting subject on that, haven't we, Jason? Yeah. Well, we had a guy on talking about Hillsborough, the ripple effect. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
I don't think I've seen no, but I've heard, that things went on which shouldn't have gone on.
Well, things like the sports minister possibly being linked with companies that are making plastic seating.
Yeah.
And they wanted all-seater stadiums. Yeah. There's a few questions to be asked, so that's an interesting thing as well. But
it is.
We've got all interesting subjects coming up now. So
brilliant! I've enjoyed every minute.
Yeah, me too. I've really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to the 3rd instalment.
You'll love it.
Really. I know I will. Do you want to take us out, Jason?
Yeah, well, I'll say, right, we'll see you tomorrow night. We've got Andy and Adi is going to be joining us. It's our 250th show, so join us tomorrow night. There'll be the 4 of us having a bit of a round table, a bit of a laugh, some memories, and if you've got a favourite RN moment, and just let us know. If you can dig it out and find it from somewhere, then we'll play a few as well. So that's going to be tomorrow night, so a little bit light-hearted and different from tonight. So great show, guys. Thanks very much, Dennis.
Thank you.
And thanks, Paul, for
awesome.
Can I just say that people in Britain, if they go on YouTube to my channel, will be told there's no videos on this channel, but there actually is. If you press playlist or something like that, or press videos, some videos will turn up. So we probably need a proxy for everything.
Is that where they can only find you? Is it YouTube, Dennis Wise?
YouTube, yeah. All the others. I mean, Alex Jones moaned for months about being banned off Facebook. I was banned after 3 weeks.
Well, I wondered where you'd gone, to be fair. That's why I couldn't get hold of you. And then I found you on Skype by chance. Well, I mentioned you on one of your video feeds.
That's right.
And I couldn't get hold of you. I couldn't. If you'd sent me something, it didn't come through. And then fortunately, we joined. So I'm looking forward to the 3rd instalment. I appreciate you giving your time tonight to talk about it, Dennis, because I know it's a very spiky subject, but it's something we've got to be able to talk about.
Listen, I can understand the English, being, when they're getting told all this, it's hard because they've lost relatives in that war. But my relatives were killed by the English, and I'm doing my best to enlighten them to what's happening to them. That's all it is. Yeah,
that's what we're all doing. That's why we give people platforms to come on and tell us stories. Thanks a lot again, Dennis.
All right, pal.
Cheers, Jason. I'll speak to you tomorrow, son.
Take it easy.
Bye, everybody. Bye.